Hi guys, Olive here today to tell you about my most anticipated book releases that are all due to come out in July, August, and September of 2021. I started doing one of these videos once per quarter because I am so much more aware of new releases than I ever have been before for a variety of reasons that I've spoken about in previous videos. I won't go into it again here. But I hear about so many exciting new book releases, and I think it's really fun to do one of these videos every once in a while and put them on your radar as well. This quarter is particularly exciting because it contains the month of September, which is historically publishing's biggest month, but that's not to say that July and August won't be bringing some big titles as well. They definitely will be. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the books in the order of their publication. I'm going to talk about them chronologically. So I will start off by talking about the books that will close out the summer and then move into the books that will kick off the big fall season. First, I want to tell you about two books that come out on July 6th. One of those two is Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. This is going to be an epic historical novel all about a former slave who goes on to become one of the wealthiest and most powerful landowners in the West Indies. And this book is based on the true story, based on the life of a real woman, which makes me all the more excited to read it. And then also due to come out on July 6th is Fox and I, An Uncommon Friendship by Catherine Raven. This book is a blend of nature writing and memoir, so that means it's directly up my alley. It was written by a biologist, and in it she discusses how she befriended a wild fox. She obviously talks about that friendship within this memoir, but it also seems from my research like she brings in other topics like fox hunting, land management, and then curiously pieces of classic literature, including The Little Prince, which I sadly have not read yet. I need to get on that. This book has definitely been getting a bigger marketing push than I normally see for pieces of nature writing or even for memoirs, so this is one I suspect you'll be seeing around. I have two titles coming out on July 13th on this list. The first of those two is a work of nonfiction from an author whose name you will probably recognize if you're really into popular nonfiction. It's Mr. Sam Keen. He's the author of The Violinist's Thumb, The Disappearing Spoon, among other books. Well, he has a new book coming out on July 13th, and it's called The Ice Pick Surgeon: Murder, Fraud, Sabotage, Piracy, and Other Dastardly Deeds Perpetrated in the Name of Science. I always love a good nonfiction book with a subtitle that says it all, but just in case it wasn't clear, this is a book all about nefarious activities done for science. It's about scientists who really push the boundaries, but into the unethical, and sometimes into the downright criminal. This does seem more like a fall book to me instead of a summer book. I don't know why it's coming out in July, but his books are always so much fun that whenever he wants to give us a new one, I will take it. And then the second July 13th release is actually the one and only YA title on my list for this quarter. It's called When All the Girls Are Sleeping by Emily Arsenault. It is set at a girls' boarding school that has a senior dorm haunted by a ghost. And this ghost might have something to do with the death of our main character's best friend a year prior to the events of this novel. I don't read a ton of YA, but I am truly a sucker for anything dark academia. In the name of full transparency, this author reached out to me because I am so not quiet about my love of campus novels. She thought I might enjoy this one, so she offered me an ARC. I responded with an enthusiastic yes, and I cannot wait to read this. Now on to the third week in July. There are two books coming out on July 20th that I thought might be of interest to you because they certainly are to me. The first of those two is called The Cult of We: WeWork, Adam Newman, and the Great Startup Delusion by Elliot Brown and Maureen Farrell. Very much in the vein of Bad Blood by John Carreyrou, this is a book about another Silicon Valley startup and its eventual implosion. Unlike Theranos, I had heard of this company before hearing about this book, but I don't know much about the situation, and I'm deliberately holding off learning any more about it before I can get my hands on this book, because I'm sure, just like Bad Blood, it's going to be a roller coaster ride, and I am ready to experience it. And then the second book coming out on July 20th is called Until Proven Safe: The History and Future of Quarantine by Nicola Twiley and Jeff Manaugh. You already know why this one is coming out. It's obviously very topical, but this book doesn't talk about quarantine just in the context of COVID. This book actually discusses where the concept of quarantine came from in the first place. It gives a history of the practice, and it also discusses, based on research that's going on right now, where the practice might go in the future. Will it continue to look like it does right now, or will it look like something different? I know a lot of you are probably feeling that you don't want to be reading about anything to do with the pandemic. I know it probably feels very new, probably feels like it's too soon, especially since this pandemic is still going on. But personally, I've been really wanting to read more about the situation. I think that knowledge is power, and that's just how I feel about this particular instance. I know not everyone feels the same. I just recently reviewed The Premonition by Michael Lewis, all about the early days of the pandemic and people who wanted to be helpful in creating a plan of how we should all be reacting to the emergence of the virus. And I definitely want to read more. This one's definitely on my list. This list is actually turning out to be very tidy. There are 2 books for every single week in July, and July 27th has 2 more books that I would like to highlight. The first of those 2 is a memoir. It's called Below the Edge of Darkness by Edith Witter. This is a memoir written by a marine biologist who had a terrifying experience in her younger years. When she was in college studying to become a marine biologist, she had to have a surgery of some kind, and that surgery went wrong and it blinded her. Thankfully, her vision did eventually come back. And in this book, she talks about that experience, and she also talks about it kind of in comparison to her life's work, because she studies bioluminescent creatures that live in the deep sea, where it is very dark. And she had this literally very dark time in her life. There is something about the way this book sounds. I just have this gut feeling. Obviously, it will depend on what kind of a job the author does with this book, but I do just have this feeling that this book has the potential to become a new favorite. The second July 27th release on my radar is a novel, and it's called Fierce Little Thing by Miranda Beverly Whittemore. This is by the author of Bittersweet, which is a secret history-esque type book that I read and loved before I joined BookTube. This new book from this author is all about this young woman who, for a period of time in her young life, lives on this cult-like commune run by a very charismatic leader in Maine. Well, we fast forward 20 years later, after she's no longer living on this commune. She's living by herself in Connecticut. But this charismatic leader from way back when calls back everyone who used to live there. And he says if they don't all agree to come back, he will reveal the bad thing that happened 20 years ago. So obviously this one also sounds like it's going to be kind of like The Secret History, and I am here for it. Moving on to the month of August, the first Tuesday of the month, August 3rd, has one new release coming out that I would really like to mention. It's called Made in China, a memoir of love and labor by Anna Kwu. As the subtitle of this book says, this is a memoir. The author of this book, just like her parents, is a Chinese immigrant, and when she was a teenager, she was forced by her mother to work in her family's sweatshop in Queens. There were also very high expectations of her at home, and so eventually she ended up calling Child Protective Services on her own behalf. And that choice ended up having a huge impact on the rest of her life. As an adult, estranged from her mother, she decides to request her own file from Child Protective Services. And when she's reading that file, she discovers that a lot of key details are wrong. And so that, in addition to things that are happening in her adult life, it makes her question a lot of things in her life. This book sounds so powerful, so fantastic, and it's being published by Catapults, one of my favorite indies, so I know it's going to be a great book. Now, on August 10th, there are 2 books of note coming out that I should mention. The first one is destined to become a big one. It's called Mrs. March by Virginia Fato. This book is all about the wife of a famous writer who is thrilled with the success of her husband's latest novel, until someone suggests that one of the characters in that new book, a woman of ill repute, might be based on her, the wife. This causes a downward spiral for her, and she slowly starts to lose her grip on reality. I had the pleasure of talking to some fellow book critics recently, virtually, and one person said that they read this book and that it was fantastic, and they let the whole group of us know that there's already an adaptation of this book in the works. It was optioned very, very early by Elizabeth Moss, the actress. She played Peggy in Mad Men. She currently stars in The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu. You know everyone's going to be talking about this book if there's going to be a big movie based on it, so I can't wait to read it. And then I guess August must be the start of the dark season, because also coming out on August 10th is This Party's Dead: Grief, Joy, and Spilled Rum at the World's Death Festivals by Erica Buist. This is a memoir of a woman who, in the aftermath of her father-in-law's death, decides that she wants to travel the world and see how other cultures deal with death. This one seems like a must-read for all of us Caitlin Doughty fans. And the last two books coming out in August on this list are both due to come out on August 24th. The first of those two is called A Woven World, on fashion, fishermen, and the sardine dress by Alison Hawthorne Deming. The topic of this book was inspired by a dress that the author saw being exhibited at the Met. It's called the sardine dress, and the embellishments on it, the surface embellishments, took over 1,500 hours to make. And this inspired the author to look into the dying art of craftsmanship. We live in a world filled with items made by machines. So she decided she wanted to examine what we, the human race, lose when we take this work that's tied to community and culture. What happens when we take that out of human hands? And also, just a fun fact, this author is a descendant of Nathaniel Hawthorne. And Seeing Ghosts by Kat Chow is also due to come out on August 24th. This is a memoir written by a former reporter at NPR. The premise of it sounds a little bit complicated, but it seems like it's going to be about how grief is processed by 3 different generations of her Chinese American family. This book is being compared to the works of Helen Macdonald. That might just be a name drop for the sake of marketing, but I love Helen Macdonald with my whole heart, and I will read anything that's compared to any of her books. So hopefully I'll be reading this one in the very near future. And now we get to the biggest month of the quarter, publishing's hottest month, September. Starting off big, Lauren Groff, author of Fates and Furies, is going to be releasing her first new novel in 6 years on September 7th. It's called Matrix. This is a work of historical fiction that takes on the story of Marie de France, a poet who lived in the 12th century. Very little is known about her life, so Lauren Groff creates a story for her in this novel while she explores the bigger topic of female creativity. I loved Fates and Furies back in 2015, so I cannot wait to dive into this one. For whatever reason, September 14th seems like it's going to be a particularly hot release date in the month of September, because it's the one day in this entire upcoming quarter that there are not 1, not 2, but 3 notable books coming out that I wanted to tell you about. The first one coming out on September 14th is from an author who I have had the pleasure of meeting and speaking with in pre-pandemic times. That is, New York Times columnist Margaret Rankle has a collection of her pieces coming out on September 14th, and it's called Graceland at Last. This book contains 60 different essays on a wide variety of topics. She writes about so many different things for the Times. And I suspect this is going to be one that I need to go out and buy my own physical copy of, because I know I'm going to want to revisit so many different things in this book. And I think I'm going to want to have it as a physical copy. I loved her book, Late Migrations. I think her writing is absolutely phenomenal. I can't even express to you how wonderful she was when I met her and when I spoke with her. She was so lovely to me. We were just exchanging book recommendations. I know that fact is going to make this book all the more meaningful for me. But another notable author with a name that you will likely recognize has a book coming out on September 14th. Science writer Mary Roach has a new book coming out, and it's called Fuzz: When Nature Breaks the Law. This book is all about how we as humans organize our society in a very tidy way using laws. But what happens when those laws come into conflict with the lawless natural worlds? In true Mary Roach fashion, she's going to look at this rather broad concept using individual case studies, and it will, for sure, be hilarious. And then something even lighter coming out on September 14th is the one and only romance book on this list. It's called The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This book is all about a fake relationship between scientists. Our main character is a third-year PhD student, and she really wants to get her best friend off of her back about finding love. In order to do that, she kisses the first guy she sees. This guy is also a scientist, and he agrees to be her fake boyfriend. But then, obviously, chemistry happens. I'm going to be doing a lot of reading of heavier things as the fall approaches, so this one will be a fantastic palate cleanser. On September 21st, there is one book coming out that I am really excited about. It's called Pump, A Natural History of the Heart by Bill Schutz. In case you don't recognize this author's name, a few years back he released a book, a very, very entertaining book on cannibalism that I actually reviewed here on this channel while I was drunk on red wine. This new book of his is, of course, all about the heart, but it's not just about the human heart. It starts with the development of hearts as organs in all different types of living creatures, and then he moves all the way up to current technologies that we have to study the heart. If you have not read any Bill Schutz, I highly recommend that you do so, especially if you like authors like Mary Roach, Bill Bryson, Sam Keen. He's that kind of an author. He is hilarious. His books are so informative while being so much fun. I am sure this book will be no exception. And then to close out this quarter, there are two different books coming out on September 28th that I would like to mention. The first one is a darker work of nonfiction. It's called Personal Effects: What Recovering the Dead Teaches Me About Caring for the Living by Robert A. Jensen. The author of this book owns the world's largest disaster management company, and he has a lot of experience recovering items from victims and returning those items to the victim's family. But he also has years of experience providing emotional and logistical support to families, governments, companies who have all just gone through the unimaginable. In this book, he discusses his own personal story, but he also discusses the work that he does. This book sounds perfect for fans of Sue Black, like myself. And then the second September 28th release, and the final book on this list, might just be the book I am the most excited about, and that's saying something given how strong of a list this is. But it's because one of my very favorite natural history writers, Thor Hansen, has a new book coming out. It's called Hurricane Lizards and Plastic Squid: The Fraught and Fascinating Biology of Climate Change. In this book, Thor Hansen is going to discuss how plants and animals are responding to climate change. Some are adjusting, some are adapting, and others are sadly dying off. I do suspect this book is going to bear some similarities to the work of Elizabeth Kolbert, which I'm totally here for. I love her books. But this is a Thor Hansen book, so no matter what he writes about, it is sure to please me. So there you have it. Those are the 20 books that I am most anticipating in the third quarter of 2021. If you missed my previous two videos discussing books coming out in the first and second quarters of 2021, or if you'd like to revisit them now that a lot of those release dates have come and gone and those books are now available, I will link those two videos for you in the description box below. And also in the description box below, there will be links to where you can find all of the books that I mentioned in this video. Let me know in the comment section below which of these books you are the most excited about. I would love to know, because I am, of course, considering reviewing any or maybe even all of these books in the third quarter of 2021. So I would love to know which ones you would most like to see reviews of. Also, if there are any quarter 3 releases that I didn't speak about in this video, but that you're really hyped about, please let me know what those are in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.